Hey everyone, it's Paul here from Adopt and Embrace. Welcome to the third installment of our live stream on the Adopt and Embrace YouTube channel, where we're walking through our Teams book for managers, Adopt and Embrace Microsoft Teams, a manager's guide to communication, collaboration, and coordination with Microsoft Teams. It's been really fun the last couple of weeks doing these live streams. Great engaging with people live that have been able to catch it live, but also seeing people catch the recording as well, which has been awesome. So thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in and listened to me ramble on about the book and the backstories behind the book and the things that have changed since we published the book about 14 months ago as well. So it's good to hear lots of people getting lots of value out of it. Now, if you want to continue to get value out of the live reads, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like the video if you feel like you're getting value out of the content as well. We'd really appreciate that. Today, the plan is probably won't go as long as we did last week. We'll probably try and keep it under an hour. We'll get through the probably one chapter, maybe two chapters of the book. So today we're going to focus on one of the chapters in part one, which is all around collaboration. So last week we looked at communication, how we engage with individuals or small groups of people directly through instant message, chat, and escalating to video calls, some screen sharing, those kinds of things. So now we're going to move into more of the collaboration side of the story. So how do we bring groups of people together to work on things, projects, initiatives, keep our team connected, have situational awareness across the team in terms of what we're doing, using Microsoft Teams to achieve that. So looking forward to having that conversation with you over the next half hour, 40 minutes as we go through that particular chapter. For those of you that don't have a copy of the book, we've found a lot of people that have been doing the live, watching along with the live read, have been kind of following on with the book kind of live as well, kind of taking notes in the side of the book if they've got a copy of it as well. So if you want to grab a copy of the book, look for it on Amazon, on Book Depository, all of the places where you'd buy paperback books, even your local bookstore. If you just ask them to order in Adopt and Embrace Microsoft Teams, they'll be able to do that for you. Or you can grab it on Kindle or Kobo or Apple Books, all those kinds of things. All the different places. For more information about where you can get a copy of the book, if you want to go deeper into this, take notes as you go along or share it with others, just head to teamsbook.info and all the information and links are there. So with that, what I might do, I'm going to just change the camera here just for a second so you can see me at full screen. And what we'll do, we'll go to the Collaborate chapter of the book. And here it is here. So we're about that far away through the book, so still a fair bit to go. But we'll get through that over the next few weeks as we go. All right, so a different way to collaborate. Clear communication is the lifeblood of a good team. In the previous chapter, we explored how you can use some of the key features of Microsoft Teams to communicate one-on-one with your team members. Using tools like chat, audio, video, file and screen sharing enables you to communicate your intent, listen directly to feedback, or catch up with one of your direct reports about their weekend. This chapter builds on the first by starting to explore how we can bring a team together to collaborate using Microsoft Teams. At present, your team collaborates using a variety of methods. The method of choice likely depends on the urgency of the work and the intended audience. When you need to share something with the whole team, you may have sent an email to a distribution group. A distribution group is an email address that can be used to send an email to a defined list of people, generally a team. And if you look in pretty much any organization that's been run on email for the last 30 years, there'll be probably dozens, if not hundreds, potentially even thousands of these distribution lists that have basically been the lifeblood of keeping teams connected via email since the start of, seems like the dawn of email, I guess. Once you add a distribution list to the email, a subject is added, sometimes carefully worded to get attention, and if urgent, is marked as high importance. Files are attached and then sent, resulting in 27 copies of the email sitting in 27 inboxes across your organization with 27 duplicates of the file. The reply all chain reaction starts, resulting in multiple versions of files being updated, conflicting comments in different emails, and 3 forked conversations happening to the side when someone only replied to a subset of the people on the distribution list. Collaboration via email is a nightmare. And I'm sure everyone's got their own personal experiences of when they've had to, maybe send a report out to get some feedback, tried to, maybe send it to 5 or 6 stakeholders, maybe not even 27, and you've got 4 or 5 different copies of the same document back with different file names, with different changes in it, and it's basically up to you to synthesize all those things together. It can be an absolute nightmare trying to collaborate in that way, and you're basically left holding the bag at the end of the day, having to kind of undo and redo all this work to make sure you get that polished document at the end. The trouble with collaboration via email is that everyone is using it and in most cases misusing it. Important communication is missed amid the many messages arriving in the inbox of your team members. As a manager, you can't be sure when someone has received and read the message. Yet you may have chosen to use written communication because it can be referred to when an instruction isn't carried out. But is it any wonder our team members are missing important messages when everything arrives via email? This is even more problematic when email is used for urgent messages when it would be more appropriate to pick up the phone and get on a conference call. Conference calls can speed up communication across your team and give you the opportunity to check that the message is understood. They can help to ensure that everyone is on the same page. The downside, however, is that because it is a synchronous communication style, everyone needs to make the time to be on the call. If you're using an audio bridge for a conference call, it lacks any capability to show or share documents, spreadsheets, or presentations to help focus the conversation. You may have tools that allow you to set up a virtual meeting with your team and share your screen, but they are outside of the flow of your work. If only we could simplify this and do it all in one place. Now, we wrote this chapter obviously before COVID, and I think a lot of organizations have come a long way in this particular aspect of how they collaborate with each other. So if you think back 18 months, 24 months ago, conference audio bridges still had a fair amount of use in a lot of corporate and education and other institutions around the world to keep teams connected. We relied on voice to keep connected in a lot of these cases. Despite the fact that I think a lot of us recognize that there was something missing from that engagement. Maybe there was misalignment of understanding, trust wasn't developed as fast as what it could be if we used other methods. And generally those audio conferencing bridges are expensive as well when you're paying per minute per participant as well. During COVID, I think we've almost seen, I think at least from our experience and what we've seen with our customers, almost the death of the audio conference to some extent, and the replacement of that with the video call or the video conference or the video meeting. Now, some of those meetings absolutely feel like they're still audio conferences because 3/4 or everyone on the call has their video turned off. So I guess the principles are still coming through there. But I think we've moved a long way from that audio conferencing world. Hopefully your organization has as well. A space for your team to collaborate. So how do we set ourselves up with a place for our team to collaborate? Let's explore what a team in Microsoft Teams is. At its core, a team is a space that enables you to bring together people, content, systems, or tools that you use every day. It's a place where your people can discuss important topics, create, refine, and share documents, spreadsheets, and presentations, and draw on data or information from the array of tools you have across your organization. Unlike the distributed and disparate mailboxes that your team uses today, which are all silos of your team's knowledge, creating a team establishes a centralized place where every member can see what is going on, the conversations, the files being worked on and shared, and the task lists being maintained, the notes being taken, and the meetings taking place. It consolidates what is happening in your team today across email, network file shares, audio bridges, video conferencing, Kanban boards on your office wall filled with post-it notes, and more into a single place where you can where you all can improve your situational awareness, efficiency, and effectiveness. Now, that situational awareness thing, that's kind of purposeful phrase we put into the book here. One of the things we found when we're working with lots of managers of teams in particular is that the thing that they struggled with and continue to struggle with is just having that awareness of exactly what's going on in their team. It's not because they want to micromanage. It's not because they want to keep on top of every single thing and be involved in every single decision, but just understanding what's going on across a team, what people are focused on, what they're working on, and where they could potentially need assistance or get some assistance or guidance from their manager. So creating that situational awareness when everything is happening in email is really difficult because it relies on the manager basically being involved in every single email thread, which overloads their inbox. Shifting to a centralized collaboration space like Teams allows managers and team leaders to get that situational awareness just because the work is happening in a more transparent, open way as well. So I think that's a really key. Whilst it's hard to measure, I think from how your managers or team leaders in your business perceive the effectiveness of tools like Teams, I think a lot of the time it comes back to that situational awareness and if they actually feel like they've got a better handle or grip on what's going on in their team as well. A team can be created as private, where as the team owner, you have complete control over who has access to participate. Alternatively, it can be created as a public team, allowing people to discover and join the team as they wish. Teams can be created for different purposes, including projects, events, processes, committees, communities of practice, bids, managing customer relationships, and many more. In part 2 of this book, which we'll probably get through in a few other live streams time from now, we'll walk through how to identify the right time to create a team and the right way to create a team. Adding nuance to how we work together. Within each team, there is another structure that helps manage and refine the way we collaborate. Channels. Channels allow you to group or focus the conversations that are occurring into different subjects, topics, projects, customer journey stages. In fact, any way you think would help add structure to the way your team needs to work together. Within a channel, your team can engage in conversations, share and co-author documents, meet through both scheduled and ad hoc meetings, and see each other face-to-face through video. Video conversations can be recorded, which is perfect for capturing which is perfect for capturing training, process walkthroughs, or important meetings and presentations. The recording is added to the conversation in the context of all the other collaborative activity that is taking place. Let's look at an example of a team. Say you're a sales manager and you have a team of 8 business development managers across your territory. You also work closely with a marketing team that reports to your organization's chief marketing officer. The marketers are assisting with some account-based marketing in your high priority accounts. And in terms of this example, think of an example similar to that relates to your organization as well. You could set up a team that is designed to help your BDMs and the marketers work better together and increase revenue. You create a team called Southern Territory Sales and Marketing. Within the team, you want to make sure there is focus on your top 5 accounts in the territory. So you create 5 channels, each one named after one of those 5 high priority accounts. You add a 6th channel called Research and Trends, where the marketers and BDMs share insights and sales collateral, which can be used to help create interest or frame a conversation with your prospects. Let's look at another example. You're a human resources manager, and you need to run a project to update all the position descriptions in your company in order to comply with a new regulation put in place by the government. You create a team called PD Renewal Project and invite your HR business partners and union representatives to participate. You set it up as a private team, as some of the information may be sensitive until all parties agree on what the position descriptions should look like. Within the team, you create channels to focus your energy, one simply called Regulation, where you have shared the new legislation and initiated a conversation across the team about how to interpret the new laws that were put in place. Another channel is Executive PDs, to ensure there is a focus on the 15 members of your senior executive team where position descriptions require additional effort based on the new rules in place. Another few channels are focused on the different role types across the organization. Finally, a channel called Rollout focuses the conversation on how you plan to distribute the new position descriptions and get your employees to sign their new contracts. Here's another example. Maybe you're a teacher and you want to establish a place where you can collaborate with your students. And to be honest, this is one of the biggest examples we've seen over the past 12 months or 9 months with COVID, the rush through pure necessity to be able to deliver teaching and learning at distance remotely. Here in Australia, we saw a big wave of it across the world at the moment as more countries going into lockdown. We're seeing more and more schools, and in fact, almost every school having to deal with this challenge at the moment. Right, so maybe you're a teacher and you want to establish a place where you can collaborate with your students. You create a team for the subject you are teaching, grade 10 maths. You invite all your students on the class roll into the team. Channels could be set up by topic area, such as statistics, algebra, calculus, or they could be set up in accordance with where you are in the term, week 1, week 3, week 7. Within each channel, you share learning resources, provide guidance, and set challenges for the class to complete together. Finally, you could be the manager of a large engineering field services team. You want to empower them to be more mobile and draw on the expertise of subject matter experts in headquarters, as well as on the collective wisdom of the 34 field service reps in your department. You create a team called Electrical Field Service Remote Experts. You create channels focused on the common issues or challenges they face when working on transformers across the countryside. safety, windings, insulation, cooling, relays, and other. Your field engineers use a Teams app on their mobile phones to take photos of issues they face, using their finger to draw in arrows on the images before they post them to the appropriate channel for advice. And if you watched the live stream last week, we actually showed you how to do that with the Teams mobile app, being able to take pictures on your phone, mark them up with your finger using ink, and then send them into the chat. Again, the best part of that being that the photo isn't saved locally on that person's device. So if they're using BYOD devices or things like that, it's a really great way to ensure that important corporate information isn't stored locally on their device. Members of the team answer the question in real time, enabling the field service engineer to continue their work without delay. So I think the key thing there is, and we get into this a lot more later on in the book, thinking about the role, like the relationship between teams and channels, and when is the right time to create a team, what is the right number of channels to have, and things like that. So when we're introducing this topic of channels, I just want you to remember that the aim here is not to have as many channels as possible. Whilst Microsoft Teams allows you to have a fair number of channels in your team, a significant number of channels in your team, and I'm sure that number will probably increase in the future as well as they increase the capability of the product, you've got to start thinking about, as a group, as a team, as a project, as a group of individuals coming together to achieve a shared outcome. There's only so much we can focus on at once. And that's why we generally recommend try and keep the number of channels you have in a team to 7 or 8 at absolute maximum. Any more than that, chances are you probably should break it into separate teams. Now, the kind of decision-making process and the way to think about that and how to design those teams, that's what we cover in part 2 of the book. So if you tune in for live streams in the future, we're going to go through that in a lot of detail in terms of how to make the decisions in terms of when's the right time to create a team, what are the right channels to have, and when to break those teams together. But as an introductory statement, don't try and do everything in one team and have lots and lots of channels. Just focus on things that you could pay attention to. Because if you have 27 things to pay attention to, chances are you're not going to pay attention to all of them. The sweet spot's less than 7 or 8. Creating, refining, and sharing knowledge. Now that we have channels to focus our energy and attention in the team, we can apply that focus to create or refine new knowledge. The simplest way to do this is to actively engage in the channel by posting or contributing to the conversation. This shared stream of consciousness from your teammates will enable others in your group to discover new perspectives, explore and make connections between ideas, and apply these to solving complex problems. Beyond simple conversation, your team members can work on more structured artifacts, like documents, spreadsheets, and presentations in the channel. Instead of emailing around 15 different copies of the same document with everyone's edits, your team can do all the work on the exact same document, reducing the need to consolidate the changes at the last minute. And out of all the really impactful things that we can do with Microsoft Teams and the transition to collaborating in Microsoft Teams, I think this is probably one of the most important ones. Now, if you've been using SharePoint, either on-prem or online for a long time, you've been able to do this thing called co-authoring, where you can bring multiple people into a document and work on the same document. Teams just makes that experience a lot easier because we have that conversational wrapper around the documents that we're working on as well. But there's so many organizations that we still talk to today that haven't experienced or even seen or are even aware of this capability, even though they might be SharePoint customers for such a long time. And every time we do a workshop, we talk about that experience of when people are trying to collaborate on file shares, where you double click on a document on your S drive or your H drive or something like that, and you get that dreaded dialog box come up that says, this document is locked. Do you want to open it read only or be notified when it's unlocked? And there's so many organizations that still suffer through that today because they're still trying to do collaboration on that file share, or they're trying to do the collaboration via the email nightmare that we described earlier in the book as well. So in terms of like a key thing to focus on if you're trying to get your peers across the line in terms of the behaviors you want to see in teams, working through this document collaboration scenario in particular is probably one of the highest impact ones you can focus your energy on, whether it's in your team, in your department, across your whole organization. Look, a great example of this in action is how we wrote this book that I'm reading right now. We set up a team called Teams Book Factory. And in that team, there is a channel called Working Manuscript to focus our discussions around writing the book. In that channel, we created a Word document, set the appropriate page size, margins, and styles for the paperback book size we were targeting, and started writing. Almost 3 months later, the 4 authors and 2 editors have all been working on the exact same file. And like, this is genuinely a true story. This book here that we wrote, this is all done with one Word document. There was no emails backwards and forwards. There was no attachments we needed to kind of synthesize later on or anything like that. We had the 4 co-authors of the book working in the same document, sometimes synchronously at the same time, but sometimes asynchronously. So I would do some work, and then Helen would do some work, and then Daryl would do some work on it, Ben would do some work on it. And when we came into the file, we could actually see those changes that had occurred as well. And that's really, really powerful. I think from managing a complex writing project point of view, the fact that we could all work on the one document just saved us so much hassle in trying to integrate people's edits and changes into the document. Now, we had version history there if we needed to go back on things. There's sometimes we turned on track changes just as we're getting closer to the end to make sure we kind of saw exactly what's going on and kind of changed it as we went through the editing process. But the fact that we can write a book like that, using this capability reliably, I think, is a testament to the technology and how you could apply it in your business as well, in terms of working on your important presentation coming up next week, your annual report, or your management reports that you might have to share with a few of your team leaders to make sure that we're all on the same page and aligned to the work we're doing. Sales proposals, all those kinds of high pressure, time sensitive things. This works really well for as well, because everyone can see what's going on. There's no overhead of the communication backwards and forwards. Everyone knows the location it's in. That's great. There's a bit more nuance to how we did it with the book as well. I might as well talk about it quickly here while I'm still talking about this point. The working manuscript was one Word document. Every week or two, what we did is took a snapshot of that document at that point in time and just made a copy of it and put it into a separate folder. The version history, we're going through the version history pretty quickly because obviously we're making lots of edits and changes and things like that. So we kind of just made sure we had an archived copy off to the side. Now, we didn't rename the working manuscript or anything like that. We kept the same document that we were working in the entire time. We just took a snapshot copy of that and just stored it in an archive folder just so we had a backup copy of it there. And that just meant we could see the progress of our work throughout the process. We had, for I think about 14 or 15 snapshots in the end of the book as we progressed through it. So it just gave us a little bit more certainty on a longer term document like this, which is relatively easy to do as well. All right, so let's get back into the book. This doesn't just apply to Word documents. If you have an upcoming management meeting you need to prepare for, or a pitch to a prospective client, you can bring your team together to work on the presentation or build out the financial model together instead of siloed individual efforts that someone has to consolidate at the last minute. Taking action. Sometimes when you work in a group, you need to get the attention of your colleagues. In the real world, you might just say, "Hey, Brad, look at this." Or, "Alicia, have you updated the management report yet?" When we hear our name, we turn around in a swivel chair and pay attention to whoever is speaking to us. Now, again, things that have changed since we wrote this book. There is a complete lack of people being in an office at the moment, and everyone is missing their swivel chairs. A lot of us are working from the kitchen table, working wherever we can in our homes because that's where we need to be. And I think that going back into the office for a lot of us is going to take a lot of time. Some of our customers here in Australia, they got all ready to go back into their office in Melbourne recently, and they were in the office for just 3 days before another lockdown came and everyone had to work from home again. So I think it's something we're going to get used to for the next short to medium term, absolutely. But you remember, like when we did work in the office, it was really easy to get people's attention to focus them on the particular activity or thing you wanted to do. You'd call their name, you'd talk to them in the office, that kind of thing. In the digital world, it's a little harder to get someone's attention. And again, we would have all experienced this last 9 months. Within Microsoft Teams, you can get people's attention through a few different methods: mentions, high importance, and priority notifications. When you type the name of someone into your team into a conversation, you'll notice a box that appears listing that person's name. If you click on that name or hit enter, that person will be tagged in your message. When you send the message, they will receive a notification that someone, you, mentioned them in a post. This is handy when you want to make sure that a person sees your message. You don't need to just mention an individual though. You can mention a channel to get attention of everyone who is showing or following that channel, or you can mention an entire team. One quick thing about mentions, because I think a lot of us would have experienced this as we all rushed to Microsoft Teams or started to use Microsoft Teams during lockdowns and the pandemic and remote work and all those kinds of things. One of the rules we talk about, and we'll talk about it multiple times in this book when I read through it as well, is We don't want to try and overwhelm people with notifications. The power of a notification is really powerful if you use it well, but if it's overused, its power diminishes incredibly quickly. So first things we need to do is kind of have a conversation with our organization, with our team, to make sure that people are setting the notification settings to suit them. If people, one of the biggest complaints we get about Microsoft Teams is people are overwhelmed with the number of notifications. They can't keep up with what's going on. So have a conversation with everyone about just setting the notification settings to, when you want to be notified of things. You don't need to be notified of every message in every channel and every team. It's really up to you to choose and go into look at that content when you want. The kind of rule, the life rule in terms of Teams, what we recommend is that you shouldn't be using the @mention just when you're replying to people. If it's just like an FYI or just a simple reply where there's information there that you're sharing, you don't really need to mention someone in that post. When you should be mentioning people is when you want them to take a very specific action. So there's some actionable thing you need them to do in that message that you've sent. Now, just with that simple philosophy, what that means is we no longer have 48 different notifications for all the messages that are of a thread that I was involved in and people mentioning me in every reply. What I have is just 3 notifications, and it allows me to prioritize which messages I look at because they're the ones that need me to take action throughout the day. And then the rest of the day, when I've got time, I can go through and read the rest of the messages at my leisure. So that's kind of the power of mentions and the power of notifications. Just think about how you're applying notifications. Don't overuse them, and try and encourage your team only to use them when you actually really need to get someone's attention. Because if we get flooded with notifications, the value just diminishes significantly. Now, there's lots of really great visual signals we have in Microsoft Teams as well that allow us to focus our attention to those notifications. And we might show those a little bit later on in one of the later live streams as well to kind of show you how those notifications happen in action. That philosophy of notifications happens in action as well. So that's a brief intro to notifications. Adding importance to a message is just like making an email high importance. And we've all had emails that have the high importance flag on them, so we know what we're talking about there. Sometimes they're not really high importance, are they? And the same applies in Teams. In Teams, this function will display an exclamation mark beside the channel to let everyone know there is an important message that needs to be read. It will also feature a red border to help draw your audience's attention to what you need to say. And again, if with any signal like this that kind of highlights attention or urgency on a message, just make sure you use them sparingly. Only use them when you need to use them. Otherwise, their power diminishes significantly. Finally, if you really, 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 really need someone's attention, in an emergency, for example, you can use a priority notification. A priority notification will send an alert not only to the individuals you wish to notify, but also to every device that they have Microsoft Teams logged into every 2 minutes for 20 minutes. This is a really powerful way to disrupt someone's day and get their attention. Now, a quick change since we wrote the book: priority notifications actually aren't something you get with the default licensing now for Microsoft Teams. It's an additional licensing cost to get that. So if you are in a situation where you need to be able to use that priority notification for emergency broadcasts, maybe workplace health and safety things on a site, if you're in a hospital, you need to get the attention of a consultant or something like that using Teams. That's something you might absolutely want to look at, the priority notification capability, but don't expect it to be there if you just got the out-of-the-box Teams licensing experience that you'd get with an Office 365 E3 license or something like that. Now, before you get all excited and start pinging your colleagues with notifications, whether through a mention or a priority notification, a word of warning. If someone yelled your name all day, every day, the power of using your name to get your attention would diminish very quickly and likely become very annoying. The same can occur in Microsoft Teams. We do not recommend you use these features to tell people that you have replied to their message or posted something to a channel. Save these features for when you really need them. As a rule, only use a mention when you need someone to act. This will help preserve the power of the notification, as the recipient will not be flooded with them. It will also allow the recipients to triage more effectively and focus their attention on priorities throughout their day. Priority notifications should be saved for real emergencies, when you're trying to page a consultant to provide life-saving surgery in a hospital, when there is a significant safety issue at your site that all members of the team need to be aware of, or when the beans have run out of the coffee machine. Back when we were in offices with coffee machines. Right? So many of these stories that apply to the old world, pre-COVID, BC. All right, bringing the team together. Whether your team has daily stand-ups, weekly meetings, or monthly, quarterly all-hands, ensuring your team remains connected and on the same page is important. With conversations occurring in a centralized location, your teams need to spend time in your meetings sharing updates on what has been happening should reduce, enabling you to spend more time on making decisions, coaching, or planning for the future. And it's really interesting that when we talk to leaders in businesses or managers in businesses, one of their key frustrations they have with meetings generally is that the fact that we have to bring our team together for a synchronous kind of real-time conversation with each other, and then we just read content or share content with each other, which we could have read before the meeting. And we might have a 1 hour meeting allotted where 50 minutes of it is information sharing, maybe 3 minutes of it is actual decision making or productive work in that meeting. And I think if we get further into Teams and meetings and how we structure meetings well in Microsoft Teams, it creates a great opportunity to shift that the value of a meeting away from just the meeting that could have been an email to something that's really more meaningful and valuable for all the participants and also the organization as well. Right. You can schedule meetings to occur within a channel inside your team. This allows you to take advantage of some of the great communication capabilities we discussed in the previous chapter or in the previous live stream, including high-quality video conferencing and screen sharing, all from the comfort of your desktop, laptop, tablet, or phone. You can use Teams to enable your team to connect into your team meeting from anywhere in the world, whether they're at home on their tablet while one of their children is off sick from school, on their phone at a customer site in between meetings with key stakeholders, or on their laptop in your regional office, or in a pandemic-driven lockdown. At Adopt and Embrace, we have several scheduled meetings that occur each week. One example happens on Tuesdays at 12:30 p.m., which is our weekly management team meeting. The recurring meeting is scheduled in Teams, and it automatically added an appointment to our Outlook calendar. We can join the meeting from the appointment in Outlook, or simply open up Teams and click Join. As a rule, we have all agreed to turning on our webcams whenever we meet, so we are instantly greeted with the familiar faces of the team across Australia and New Zealand. We use a third-party online tool to manage our company scorecard, issues, and actions, and the meeting facilitator shares her screen so everyone can see what we are discussing that day. We recognize that, occasionally, some members of the team won't be able to make the call because we are stuck in other meetings. Not a problem. We click Start Recording to capture the conversation over the next 90 minutes. Once the meeting is done, we stop recording and exit the meeting. Within seconds, the recording of the meeting is added to the conversation in the channel, allowing us to continue the conversation from the meeting through text-based replies and also allowing those that missed the meeting to catch up on the key discussions and decisions of the day. Now, there's probably one major change that's been kind of rolling out right now in terms of the meeting recordings that you should be aware of as well. So when we wrote the book, if you recorded a meeting in Teams, it would automatically be recorded and then saved in a service called Microsoft Stream. Now, most Office 365 customers would have Microsoft Stream turned on. Think of it like your corporate YouTube, locked down just for your employees in your organization. It allows you to store video, host video, do live streams, which you go into a lot more detail if you want to. But basically, it's a corporate version of YouTube where you can keep all your video content. So recently, Microsoft announced they made a change where any of the recordings from a Teams meeting are no longer going to be saved in Stream. They're going to be saved in the SharePoint site, that file storage that sits behind your team, and they're going to be stored there. So it's one of those things, if you're using the meeting recording regularly, it's probably worth having a chat to your IT team or your Microsoft partner that you work with, just to figure out the implications of that, if there's anything you need to consider. Ultimately, what that may mean is that because you'll be using up a fair bit of the storage space that you have associated with your team, you may start to pick and choose the meetings that you record, or you could look at if you're recording every meeting, maybe just delete the ones from 3 months ago or 4 months ago, once people had a chance to catch up and watch those meetings as well. So there might be a little bit of workflow in terms of how you manage those files you need to consider as well. All right, so our end of chapter checklist for this one, think about the time-consuming collaboration processes in your team and note them down. And every team has time-consuming collaboration processes. Even if you're still using Teams today, you're using Teams today, there will be some time-consuming stuff you haven't quite nailed yet. So make sure you note those down and have a think about it. Note beside each process how Microsoft Teams capability could help you improve those processes. And I think we've talked about a few of those capabilities today. One really great way to kind of structure this is something that we've borrowed from Microsoft and how they kind of think about this as well, is when you are trying to capture use cases or ideate use cases or ideas of how you could apply technology. It's just asking 4 simple questions. As someone in where you can kind of articulate, like someone in a role or in a team or in a part of the organization or someone that has a challenge. As someone in this part of the business, I want to. Here's the business process or the work practice or the challenge that you want to overcome using. And that can be the technology that you're talking about. So it could be a capability like video conferencing or persistent chat, or it could be the technology like Teams or Planner or whatever it is. And then I'll know it's successful when, and this is really your measure of success, but if you've made that change successfully. So as someone in, I want to using, I'll know it's successful when. If you can answer those 4 questions around those time-consuming, frustrating challenges or business processes or work practices you have in your team, they'll help you communicate the kind of change that you want to make in the way people work as well, and how the technology that you might have within Microsoft Teams and Office 365 relates to that. So it's pretty cool little simple framework you can use to help communicate those things. Last but not least, you can head to teamsbook.info, which is the website for the book. Click on resources, and there's some video content there that helps you work through all of this as well. So that's the communicate chapter. I'll just look at the time, 10:51. We've been going for about 35 minutes. So what I might do, I might wrap it up there for today, because I think that's a nice little spot to wrap up. And next week, when we go to the live stream, we'll go into the coordinate chapter, which is, actually, let me see. It's 10 pages. No, let's do it. Let's do it. All right. We've got time to do it. So let's keep going. All right. So let's go into the next chapter. So again, in this part 1, it's kind of focusing on the 3 key things that managers do in their work. They communicate, they collaborate, and they coordinate. This chapter is focused on the coordinating side of things that a manager would do. Right, a different way to coordinate. If you're a manager like me, a significant part of your day is spent coordinating. Coordination can mean many things to many people: planning, organizing, directing, controlling, scheduling, staffing, reporting, and in most cases, especially if you're a manager, just trying to keep on top of things. Coordination in practice is a mashup of sourcing information from multiple sources, analyzing or synthesizing data, making informed decisions, and communicating outcomes. For you, team coordination might mean setting your weekly or monthly roster or staff schedule, or it could mean creating your budget for the next 12 months. It could involve putting together your monthly management report, drawing on 3 different systems of record, or distributing and leveling tasks across your team. It could simply involve running your weekly team meeting and tracking actions off the back of your decisions. No matter how you coordinate today, I'm reasonably confident that a fair amount of your coordination occurs via email. Maybe you draw on reports that get emailed to you every night, or you email the roster to your whole team every fortnight. Coordinating your team tasks and actions. By adding a planner tab to a channel, excuse me one moment, you can visually track the tasks or actions that your team are currently working on. If you currently use post-it notes on a wall, or like the simplicity of visual task management that a Kanban board provides, you can have a similar experience within Microsoft Teams. In Teams, you can have a single plan for your team. If you're managing a lot of complexity, break it up into multiple plans aligned to the channels in your team. Now, this is probably the first time we talk about tabs in Microsoft Teams and how you can add this additional capability to a channel that you have within your team. So remember, a team is a place where you're going to bring the group of people together. Channels are those areas of focus that you're going to have. And then tabs allow us to bring in some specific capability or resources or a third-party application into that focused space that we have in the channel as well. So Planner is one of the ones that comes with Office 365, obviously. You need to have the Planner service turned on from an admin point of view. So normally by default, it's turned on, but in some organizations, they need to go through security reviews and other bits and pieces before they turn their stuff on. So if you don't see it there, just talk to your IT team and see where it is on their roadmap in terms of this capability. So first, you need to add the Planner tab to your channel. Click on the plus sign, the new tab button to the right of your Conversations and Files tabs at the top of your screen. Then select Planner from the apps that appear in the Add a Tab box. Create a new plan and give your tab a suitable name. There is this, actually one thing, just talking about the plan names. When we wrote this book, it probably wasn't as important. We've come to realize the name of your plan becomes more and more important as more and more plans are there. So don't just call your plan Project Plan. Don't call your plan tasks. Don't call it like to-do things or anything like that. Don't use a generic name for your plan when you add it to your team, because when you go and look at this plan in other contexts, like the new Tasks app, which we'll talk about in a second, you want to see that level of detail in terms of what that plan name actually is. So just that's something to consider. Just make sure you put a little bit more effort into naming your plan, not just call it tasks. There's a simple structure to a plan created in Planner: tasks and buckets. Tasks have a name and a due date and can be assigned to someone. To add a task, simply type in a task name and click Add Task. To help speed up the job of adding tasks to your plan, you can add all your tasks before setting due dates or assigning them to individuals. If you have more than a handful of tasks, it makes sense to group them into different buckets. The buckets in your plan are the same as the columns you might have on the wall to group your post-it notes together. To add a bucket, simply click on Add a New Bucket button to give your bucket a name. Once you've created a bucket, you can drag and drop your tasks into the different buckets. And there's one of the, again, few screenshots we put into the book, which kind of shows very high level how that bucket structure fits together. And you can see there, like the different task cards you have there that are on the Kanban board, the buckets across the top there that they're kind of categorized into as well. So pretty cool way to kind of get that post-it note vibe that you had in the office previously into a digital workspace that you're working through. Now, if you're a member of multiple teams that are using Planner, you also need to manage your own personal to-do list, and it can become overwhelming. Microsoft Teams makes it easy to see all your assigned tasks in one place, the Tasks app, which you can find on the left-hand side of the Teams application on your mobile phone. Now, funny story about this particular paragraph of the book. We wrote this knowing this feature was coming, but knowing that it hadn't been released yet. And this was the very last feature that we talked about in the book that was pushed into production. And it took us about 9 or 10 months after the book was published to this actually be reality. So apologies for everyone who read the book in the first 9 or 10 months that went looking for this and couldn't find it. But thankfully, Microsoft eventually rolled it out for us. So it helped add a little bit of life to the words that we put on the screen. Now, actually, I can't remember what that's called now, the task. It's been renamed a few times, but basically on the left-hand pane down the side there of Teams, you've got a little box there which brings together all your consolidated tasks from Planner plans, as well as your to-do list if you're using Microsoft To Do as well, which is pretty cool. So check that out if you want to have a look at it. There's one of the screenshots of from the book that kind of shows you the list of all the tasks there. I know you're not going to make any sense of that at all looking at it on the video, but you can see the kind of experience that you have there. I mean, that's available by just looking on the left-hand pane down the side there. If you can't see it as an app on the left-hand side, just click Add App and see you can find that the Tasks app there. If anyone's on the live stream and can remember the name, what it's called now, feel free to drop it into the chat. I just don't have a Teams window open to look at the moment to see exactly what it's been renamed to. Right. Many managers we work with are already using tools to manage tasks of their team. Maybe you're using Asana, Trello, Smartsheet, or others. The good news is, if you like using these tools, you can keep using these tools. Phew. We actually did a workshop yesterday with the exact example where we had a few stakeholders in the workshop that were talking about the role that Planner plays, and a few stakeholders absolutely love using Asana and got their perfect system set up in Asana in terms of managing projects and things like that. The best thing is with Teams that you don't have to use everything 100% Microsoft, right? You can bring in these third-party applications if that's where you're comfortable, if that's where you've got your systems and processes set up. You don't need to migrate this stuff across. We can just basically add that capability through a tab into your team so you can reference it along the way. Okay, so instead of adding a Planner tab to your channel, you can use the Asana, Trello, or Smartsheet tabs and link directly to your project, board, or sheet relevant to your work. If you use an online tool that doesn't have a built-in tab, as long as you have a website you can access that starts with HTTPS, you can use the website tab to deep link directly to a relevant page or a view in that tool. There's a few examples of this. I think it's quite powerful, just that browser or that website tab in particular. At Adopt and Embrace, we use the website tab to do just that. Provide easy access to the specific project plans, budgets, and actual figures inside Avaza, our software as a service project management tool, directly inside each customer-focused team. Now, the power of this is really incredible. So if you have a third-party web-based application that you use, maybe it's a project management tool, a construction management tool, something that's really specific to your industry or vertical that you operate in. And as long as that URL in that software as a service application starts with a HTTPS, you could link directly to that record, record for a person, a project, and an organization, a building, an asset, whatever that is in that particular system, which just saves you the 15 clicks of going to that application, logging in, going through the menu to try and find that specific object or page that relates to the project or the thing that you're focused on in that channel. So have a go with the browser tab in particular to deep link into those third-party software as a service, web-based applications you use as well. Most of the time, it'll work really, really nicely for you. Other tabs can help you provide the right information to your team, enabling them to make the right decisions. For example, if you have developed dashboards or reports using Power BI, you can use the Power BI tab to enable your team to quickly refer to metrics and key performance indicators without the need to go searching for that report in another browser window. Coordinating your staff. Within Microsoft Teams, you can create and manage a schedule for your team using the Shifts app. While this capability is designed for first-line workforces like those in retail, healthcare, hospitality, field service, or customer service, it can also be useful for more traditional white-collar roles where you need to coordinate people across specific timeframes. For example, you may need to plan the annual leave of your team, our favorite use case, staff a booth at a trade show you're sponsoring, or manage who from your team is on call for any inbound requests or escalations. To create a schedule, simply click on the Shifts app on the left-hand side of your Microsoft Teams window. It will likely be hidden behind the ellipsis, that's the 3 dots that you see everywhere in Microsoft 365. You might find it there. Once you're in the Shifts app, you first need to create a schedule. Schedules are based on teams, so if you already have an existing team for the group you wish to coordinate, select that team when the Choose the Team Schedule to Create dialog box appears. Then set a time zone for this team. Once your schedule has been created, you can add and assign shifts to your team members. A shift has a date, start and end time, a custom label if you want to give your shift a name, and the ability to add specific activities that a team member should do during a shift. For example, you could add the lunch break when you want them to be on the front counter or when you want them to be working in the stock room. Again, there's a quick view. I think it's maybe one of the last screenshots we have in the book of what the Shifts app look like. So if you looked at any workforce management tool or shift planning tool, it's kind of similar kind of layout and feel to that. Once you've assigned your shifts, the last step you need to do is to publish the schedule to your team. Once published, your team will get notifications via the Microsoft Teams app on their mobile phone about what shifts they have been assigned for that week. If you're not ready to assign shifts to a specific team, I'll start that again. If you're not ready to assign shifts to specific team members, or you want to give your team a choice of shifts, you can create an open shift. An open shift is one that has not yet been assigned to an employee and could be requested by a team member once the schedule has been published. As a manager, when your team requests open shifts, you can approve or deny these requests. The approval request provides you with additional information to help you make an informed decision. For example, whether it would conflict with the current shift that the team member has been assigned to, or the number of hours the individual has been assigned in the schedule already. If you want to track the actual time that your team is spending on a shift, you can leverage the time clock. Time clock is accessed via Microsoft Teams mobile app and enables your team to clock on and clock off their shift. Time clock can also use GPS or location on your team members' phones to help them understand where they are clocking on and off shift. Help you understand, whether in your store, at an event, or offsite. All the shift data can be exported using an Excel spreadsheet so you can reconcile it against your team or event budget. Finally, you can use the Shifts app as a simple way for your team to request time off, such as parental leave, vacation, or sick days. In this app, your team member requests the leave, and you can approve, deny, or ask them for additional information. Once approved, the requested time off appears in the schedule. Now, I think about the kind of looking back at this chapter that we've written here and the amount of focus we put on different things. Kind of in hindsight, I wish we didn't put as much focus on the Shifts app in here as possible. As we have done, I think it would probably be better to put more. Would have been better to put more focus on Planner and To Do. I think there's a lot more applicability to that for managers than the Shifts app. Shifts app is good for some very point-specific things, but task coordination generally, I think Planner and To Do and a bit more depth there would be great. So some of the new content we're thinking about this year, bringing out, we've got some masterclasses coming out. We'll do some specific content around task management in particular. So it'll kind of make up for what we probably left out of the book here in this particular chapter. All right, coordinating your response. If you manage a customer service team, there are likely systems you rely on to notify you of incoming jobs, tasks, or issues that need your attention. Today, this may arrive via an email alert to an individual or shared mailbox. In your team, instead of relying on forwards and reply all emails to coordinate a response, you can push those alerts into dedicated channels. By simply replying to the alert, your team can craft their response and put their plan into action. There are a few different ways to send your alerts from third-party systems into Microsoft Teams. Firstly, you can simply divert your alerts away from your shared mailbox and directly into a channel in your team. Each channel has its own email address, so you can simply click on the ellipsis, those 3 dots that we talked about earlier, beside the channel name and select Get Email Address. Anything sent to this address will appear as a message in the channel. One quick aside around the email addresses in Teams, you need to basically be on Exchange Online. for that capability to work. So if you've still got Exchange on premises, some of these things won't work. And to be honest, a lot of the capability that we see in Planner and a few other tools in Microsoft 365 or Office 365 rely on that Exchange Online experience being there and that mailbox being in the cloud. So if organization is still a little bit behind in that, some of this stuff may not work. But hopefully you'll get there eventually in terms of having that stuff in the cloud, and you can take advantage of some of these things. If you use customer service or an interaction tool like Intercom, Zendesk, User Voice, or others, there are built-in connectors that you can set up for your channel. Each connector plugs into your third-party system, and once configured, will send alerts from those tools into your channel. This is perfect if you want a notification whenever a new ticket is raised. Finally, if you're serious about streamlining both your notifications and how you respond to them, you can use Power Automate, something you might have previously known of as Flow. To refine and perfect processes for your team. Power Automate provides you with the ability to define workflow logic. For example, for any alert level above priority level 500, send it to channel X. For any alert above priority level 1000, include a high importance tag in the post. Above 1500, send an SMS to the phone of the CEO. Not sure where to start? There are plenty of examples and templates available that you can build on from the Microsoft Power Automate homepage at powerautomate.microsoft.com. Now, if you're really comfortable with Microsoft Teams and really comfortable with collaborating, that document co-creation, co-authoring experience we looked at earlier, and if you're looking to kind of stretch your understanding of what you can do with the platform, I'd really recommend diving into Power Automate and having a play with it. If you go to powerautomate.com, actually, let's see, I'll crack open the laptop here and we might have a look quickly at what we can do there. So if I'll just type in the address before I share the screen. 1 second. Powerautomate.microsoft.com. Hopefully I've typed that well. I can just go over here and switch the screen for a second. Should be there on the screen. Great. So here's Power Automate. I'm going to sign in. Hopefully this signs in without me having to authenticate, because I don't have my phone nearby to do multi-factor authentication. I just realized this could be a really boring example. Now, here we go. We got in. That's good. So Power Automate, it just allows us to automate a lot of those things that we need to do day to day in our team, or how we communicate with things. So there's some really great examples recently we've worked with some customers on. So for example, your customer onboarding process or your employee onboarding processes. How can you automate communications that happen the day that you start, and 3 days later, and 8 days later, and 15 days later? So you don't need to be constantly sending those emails and remembering where they were. We can sequence these communications using Power Automate. You can have something where someone fills in a Microsoft form, which is a tool that we have within Microsoft 365. And then when someone fills in a form, we can trigger a flow within Power Automate to store that data in a particular spreadsheet if you need it there, plus send a thank you email to that person, plus potentially add it to a SharePoint list, or send them another email sequence down the track as well. So Power Automate allows you to just automate these really simple sequences of different tasks that you do. And in every team and pretty much every role, there's going to be some of these simple automations that you could do, no matter how complex or simple your work is. And the one thing I'd recommend is once you go to powerautomate.microsoft.com, sign in, just go have a look through these templates, because Microsoft does all the heavy lifting for you in terms of building this flow for you to start with. You just got to connect it to the right spots, the right files and things you want to work with. So here's one: notify your team when a new forms response is submitted. So that's a great one where if you wanted to have a little notification appear in a channel in Teams when someone submitted a form. Say when a status of a task changes in Planner, because we're using Planner to manage our tasks, make sure you notify the channel that the task has been updated. So you can kind of again, you're talking about situational awareness at the start of the live stream. You can use some of these things to automate creating that opportunity for that situational awareness to occur. There's literally hundreds of different triggers and hundreds of different templates and things like that you can work through with Power Automate. So if you haven't had a look at it, I'd recommend you have a look at Power Automate. Especially if you want to stretch the way that you kind of automate things in your team. Our operations manager, Nicole, is now just a Power Automate fiend and is just Power Automating all the things that are repeatable processes in our business, and it's saving us a heap of time, a heap of money, and a lot of her focus and energy can now go into more meaningful conversations, coaching our team, and things like that. So if you're a manager wanting to get more time back in your day, Power Automate is something you need to have a look at. Again, one of the things that we wish we spent a little bit more time on in the book. Again, we'll be going to be spending more time on that this year and some of the other content that we're producing as well. All right, now back to the book. Now that we have explored how managers can use Microsoft Teams to communicate, collaborate, and coordinate, one question remains. How do we best establish our team or teams to set ourselves up for success? How can we ensure that we can effectively collaborate and coordinate with each other? How many teams should I create? What channels should we use? How do I ensure all our participants are on the same page? In the next part of the book, we consider how best to design and structure work in Microsoft Teams to help you achieve your professional and personal goals. All right, so the end of chapter checklist here. Again, think about those time-consuming coordination processes in your team and note them down. Feel free to use that for kind of question framework we talked about earlier. As someone in, I want to, using, I'll know it's successful when. Note down each of those processes, how you could use Teams or Office 365 capability to overcome that. And then obviously check out teamsbook.info for some more resources on how you can do that. So with that, I think that's a really great spot to finish the live stream today. We're getting through the book. We're probably just under a third of the way through, which is good. Just to give you a preview of what's coming up next. So the next part of the book is where we focus on the 10 Ps. Now, 10 Ps is a framework that we developed basically through feedback and brute force, getting punched in the face by our customers, trying to navigate these really curly questions of, when is the right time to create a team? How many channels should we have? That kind of thing. It was a consistent question that kept coming up, and we needed to find a consistent, repeatable way of answering that question. So that's when we developed the 10 Ps. Now, I won't go into all the detail of how we developed it. That'll be at the start of the live stream next week when we go talking about the 10 Ps in particular. But this is a framework that you can use, and there's resources and workbooks that come with this, which you can use for free from teamsbook.info. Go to the resources page, you'll find it there already, that you can use in your organization to help your people structure teams really well. So if there's anything you want to come back and watch, the next couple of live streams as we go through the 10 Ps chapters, which will probably take us 3 or 4 live streams to get through all of them at the rate we're going, that will just help you crystallize exactly how to answer that question about when is the right time to create a team, when is the right time to break it into multiple teams, what is the right number of channels, who should be a member of these teams, all those things that come up during the conversations that you have with your emerging team owners in your business as well. So with that, I'm going to probably wrap up the live stream there. Thank you so much for those of you that joined live. There's a few of you out there live. Thank you for participating, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, in your part of the world. Thank you so much for joining us. And those of you watching the recording, we hope that you got value out of this. Remember, if you want to be notified of the upcoming streams, make sure you subscribe to the Adopt and Embrace channel. If you got value out of the session today, please like the video. That really helps us kind of gauge if we're having an impact or not. If you've got any other follow-up questions, feel free to find this video in the YouTube channel in the future and ask your questions in the comments, and we'll try and get back to you as soon as you can. With that, thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining in today, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week, everyone. Catch you later.